Here are the 3 things you need to know before you file for naturalization, or better known as citizenship. If you have a green card and you are ready to file for your citizenship, this is the video you need to watch because you need to know all the new changes that has happened in 2025. I am U.S. immigration attorney Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. The first thing you need to know is that with every single citizenship application, naturalization application, there is a civics test, an English reading and writing test. So when you are going into your interview, you need to be prepared to read, write, and answer the questions for the civics test. Well, the civics test just got harder for those applying after October 20th, 2025. So if you are filing for citizenship naturalization today, you need to know that you're going to be taking the new test, not the old one. So anyone that filed their naturalization application before October 20th, 2025 will be taking the 2008 version of the test, which only has you studying 100 questions. However, if you are filing on October 20th or later, you are going to be taking the more expanded questions, which is 128 questions. With those questions, you need to get 12 out of 20 correct. With the previous version of the test, you only had to get 6 out of 10 correct. So there's going to be more questions. You're going to have to study a more expansive question list before your exam. So you need to make sure that you are preparing and make sure you are studying the right version of the test, because you do not want to get in there thinking that you are on the 2008 version when it's actually the 2025 version. If you already have your naturalization application pending and you want to know if you should be studying the 2008 version or the 2025 version of the questions, this is what you can do. Get your receipt notice for your N-400. So the first thing that USCIS sent you once you filed your application. I want you to look at the received date. It will be on the top left-hand corner of that receipt notice. It will have a date on there for the received date of the application. If that received date is before October 20th, 2025, then you are going to study the 2008 version of the test. If the date there is October 20th, 2025 or later, then you will be studying the 2025 version of the test. The second thing you need to know is that USCIS has changed the requirements for a medical waiver. If you are filing for naturalization, but you're not able to do the English reading and writing test, you're not able to do the civics test, and that is because of a medical condition, then you can file a form N-648 to waive that requirement. But here's the thing about this form. This form is not filled out by you, it's filled out by your medical doctor. Your doctor has to say what the diagnosis is, what the medical condition is. There's an actual code for each medical condition that they need to put on that form, and they have to make sure to fill it out completely. This is not filled out by a nurse practitioner. This is not filled out by a nurse. This is filled out by your medical doctor. This is really key here because USCIS will reject this form if it's not filled out by the right person. Now, before this new change, you can take this form with you to your interview and the officer will evaluate it, make the decision on whether to approve it or not, and then move forward with the interview. Well, now USCIS is basically saying you need to file this form N-648 with your initial naturalization application so that they can evaluate it before you even come in for the interview. In addition to having to file it with your initial application, USCIS is going to severely discount any new N-648 that is filed after the initial one is rejected or denied. What does this actually mean? So typically you can file that and the officer's like, oh, it doesn't meet certain requirements. The medical diagnosis does not reach to the level where we can waive the test and requirement. And then the person may take it back to their medical doctor to further explain what the medical condition is, to include all of their diagnosis in there. And then the officer in a future interview would review and then make a decision again. They're saying if you have to go back to your doctor to redo the I-648, and it's not for something minor, right? It's not just that, oh, the doctor forgot to sign, or that, oh, it was signed by the nurse practitioner, not your medical doctor, so you need to go back and have your medical doctor actually fill out the form. If it's not something like that, and it has to do with the actual diagnosis, USCIS is going to severely discount any new diagnosis that's included that wasn't included in the original I-648. So you really have to make sure that when your doctor is filling out that I-648, that they are including every single diagnosis that could potentially lead to you not being able to learn the English language or learn the civics test. USCIS is making it so that you essentially have one bite at the apple, and you want to take a full advantage of that and make sure that that initial application, that initial form is done correctly and completely before you even file your application. The third thing you need to know, and this may be the most important thing as well, is that there is a new good moral character requirement where USCIS is really going to be doing some background checks. They could even go and talk to your neighbors, people in your community, before making a determination that you meet the good moral character requirement. It is really important to note here that if you do have any criminal history, make sure you're talking to an immigration lawyer before you file your naturalization application, because you don't want to be within that good moral character window and end up basically not getting naturalization because you filed too early. Previously, when USCIS is looking at good moral character, they're just making sure that you don't have anything negative in your history. However, the way they're framing it now is that you have to also prove that you are a person of good moral character. Not that you lacked good moral character, but that you do have good moral character. So they're going to be basically forcing you to show more of that good moral character. And they're going to have their officers do home evaluations, not necessarily coming to your home, but asking people in your community about you. Whether they're actually going to have the resources and the funding to do this is completely besides the point. The fact that this is now a directive means that it is possible, and USCIS will have the right to do this. So do not assume that just because they may not have the resources to do it in every single case, don't assume that they're not going to have the resources to do it in your case. So be prepared and make sure that if you do have anything negative in your history, that you are going in with documentation of your good moral character. So what can be a negative thing in your history? Like I said before, criminal records are a big one. Another one is having children and not paying child support. Okay, having children and not paying child support. If your child lives with you and you're supporting them in your home, that's fine. You don't need to show additional things that you're supporting your child because your child lives with you. However, if your child does not live with you, you still need to show that you are supporting your child, especially if your child is a US citizen. The third thing that is really important as well is the taxes. I know, taxes matter. So have you been filing your tax returns every single year that you've had your green card? Because, oh yeah, that's a requirement. So if you have a filing requirement for your taxes, you are required to actually file those taxes. And then if you owe money to the IRS and you're not making any payments, if you owe money to your state and you're not making any payments, that affects your good moral character. Okay, so here's the thing. If you owe money, if you owe taxes to your state or to the federal government, you need to get on a payment plan at a minimum and have proof that you are meeting the requirements of your payment plan. Okay, if you're not meeting the requirements of your payment plan, you don't have good moral character, even though you have a payment plan. You have to also show that you are meeting the requirements. Those are the three main things when it comes to good moral character that will really affect you: criminal history, taking care of your child, and filing and paying your taxes. Now, you may have criminal history that does not make you inadmissible or automatically give you bad moral character. However, if you have continuous history with the same sort of offense and you have not done anything to fix that, USCIS can still use that against you. So even though it doesn't make you automatically a person of bad moral character, they can still use it against you. So an example of this is driving without a license. Having multiple offenses of driving without a license does not make you automatically a person of bad moral character. However, in the aggregate, looking at everything together, USCIS officers can use that to say that you may not have good moral character, and that could trigger a deeper research of your background, the personal visits and things like that. So those are the three things that you need to know before you file for naturalization in 2025. First one is that there is a new test that you need to study for if you filed your application on or after October 20th, 2025. The second thing is that there's a new requirement for the Form N648. You need to file it with your initial application, and if you later on update the form with new diagnosis, the officer can choose to discount that new form. And then finally, the good moral character requirement, you have to now affirmatively prove that you have good moral character, not that you don't have bad moral character. So the officer can look at your whole life to make that determination. The main focus is still criminal history, children, if you're taking care of your children, and finally your taxes. Are you filing it? Are you paying it? I hope this has been helpful to you as you go on your naturalization journey. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. And if you're in a position where you're not really sure what to do about naturalization, if you qualify, if there's any issues that you need to worry about to start with, please go ahead and schedule a free strategy session with me. You can do that by going to my website, lilylegal.com, click on contact us, and you can select a date and time that works best for you for us to talk about your naturalization journey.